Have you ever woken up and not recognized your own face in the mirror? Not because you've changed, but because the person staring back isn't you at all. What if everything you remember, every childhood scraped knee, every first kiss, every whispered secret, belonged to someone else, someone who died 2 years ago? This is the story of a woman who lost herself completely, not to death, but to something far more terrifying, the theft of her own mind. And what she discovered in the stolen memories she carried would shake the foundations of identity itself. The fluorescent lights hummed like dying insects above Claire Ashford's hospital bed. She didn't know they were fluorescent lights. She didn't know this was a hospital. She didn't even know her name was Claire Ashford. What she knew, what filled every corner of her consciousness with suffocating certainty, was that her name was Evelyn Marsh, that she had grown up on a cattle ranch outside Amarillo, Texas, that she could still smell the dust and hay and her father's tobacco pipe, that she had married Richard when she was 23 in a small chapel with wildflowers in her hair, that she had buried a son named Thomas when he was only 6 years old, and that the grief had carved a hole in her chest that never quite healed. She knew all of this with the kind of bone-deep knowing that doesn't question itself. The problem was that none of it had ever happened to her. "Claire, can you hear me?" The voice belonged to a man standing beside her bed, his face creased with worry, his hand reaching for hers. She looked at him blankly. He was handsome in an ordinary way, brown hair starting to grey at the temples, kind eyes, a jaw shadowed with 3 days of stubble. He looked at her like she was supposed to mean something to him, like she was supposed to mean everything. But when she searched her mind for his name, for any memory of his face, there was nothing, just a void where recognition should have been, and in that void other memories rushed in to fill the space. Richard's face, Richard's voice, Richard's hands on her shoulders the day they buried Thomas. "Who are you?" she whispered, her throat raw, her voice strange and distant even to her own ears. The man's face crumpled. "It's me, Claire. It's Marcus, your husband." He said it like the words themselves might unlock something inside her, like if he just reminded her forcefully enough, the correct memories would slot back into place. But they didn't. She stared at this stranger claiming to be her husband and felt nothing except a growing sense of horror. Because somewhere in the deepest part of her mind, a small voice was screaming that something was impossibly, catastrophically wrong. A doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand, his white coat crisp and official. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm Dr. Nathan Cole. You were in a car accident 3 days ago. You suffered a severe concussion and some trauma to the temporal lobe. Memory loss is common in cases like yours, but I assure you..." She cut him off, her voice rising in panic. "My name is Evelyn Marsh. I live in Austin. I need to call my husband Richard. Please, you have to let me call him. He'll be so worried." The words tumbled out with desperate conviction. Marcus made a choked sound. Dr. Cole's expression shifted from professional concern to something harder to read, clinical fascination mixed with unease. He glanced at Marcus, then back at her. "Mrs. Ashford, there is no Evelyn Marsh in your life. You've never been to Austin. Your name is Claire. You live here in Portland with your husband Marcus. You're a graphic designer. You have a sister named Amanda and..." "No!" She was sitting up now, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. "I know who I am. I remember everything. I remember the ranch. I remember my wedding day. I remember..." She stopped, her breath catching, as a memory surfaced with vivid, painful clarity. Thomas's small hand in hers, his laugh, the hospital room when they told her he was gone. She could see it all so clearly it hurt. But when she looked down at her own hands, hands that should have been weathered from ranch work, that should have been older, that should have worn Richard's wedding ring, she saw smooth, younger skin, unfamiliar hands, someone else's hands. And in that moment, Claire Ashford realized with absolute, soul-crushing certainty that she was trapped inside a stranger's body, living a stranger's life, while her own mind belonged to a woman who no longer existed. The psychiatric evaluation room was smaller than Claire expected, with pale green walls that were supposed to be calming, but only made her feel trapped. Dr. Cole sat across from her, his pen poised over a notepad, his expression carefully neutral. Marcus had been asked to wait outside. She could feel his presence through the door, his worry, his desperate hope that this doctor could fix whatever was broken inside her and give him back the woman he married. But Claire knew with a certainty that terrified her, that woman was gone. Maybe she had never existed at all. "Tell me about Evelyn Marsh," Dr. Cole said quietly, his voice measured and professional. It wasn't a dismissal. It wasn't the patronizing tone she'd heard from the other doctors who'd examined her. The ones who'd exchanged knowing glances and murmured words like dissociative episode and traumatic amnesia when they thought she couldn't hear. Doctor. Cole sounded genuinely curious, like he actually wanted to understand, so she told him. She told him about the ranch, about the particular way the Texas sun felt on her skin during summer, hot and relentless and alive. She described the exact layout of the farmhouse where she grew up, the creaking third step on the staircase, the water stain on the kitchen ceiling that looked like a horse, the way her mother's voice echoed through the hallway when she called everyone for dinner. She told him about meeting Richard at a county fair when she was 19, how he'd won her a stuffed elephant at the ring toss, how they danced to Patsy Cline under string lights while the smell of funnel cakes and livestock filled the air. She told him about Thomas, about the way he'd looked at her with absolute trust, about reading him bedtime stories, about the moment the doctors told her his heart couldn't be saved. And as she spoke, tears streamed down her face because these memories felt real. They felt like hers. They felt like the only true things she'd ever known. Dr. Cole wrote quickly, his pen scratching across the paper. When she finished, exhausted and hollow, he looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Claire, may I call you Claire?" She flinched at the name, but nodded. "The details you're describing are remarkably specific. Detailed memories like this don't typically emerge in cases of false memory or confabulation. They're usually vague, inconsistent." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to try something if you're willing. I'm going to show you some photographs. I want you to tell me what you feel when you see them." He pulled out a tablet and swiped to the first image. It showed a woman, Claire presumably, standing on a beach with Marcus, both of them laughing, the wind whipping her hair across her face. She studied the photograph like it was an artifact from another civilization. The woman in the picture looked happy, carefree, in love. Claire felt nothing. No recognition, no emotional connection. Nothing except a detached observation that the woman had her face but wasn't her. "I don't know her," she whispered. Dr. Cole nodded and swiped to the next image. This one showed a different woman, older, maybe in her late 40s, with kind eyes and dark hair pulled back in a braid. She was standing in front of a farmhouse, hand shielding her eyes from the sun. The moment Claire saw her, her breath caught. Her heart began to race. A sob tore from her throat before she could stop it. "That's me," she gasped. "That's me. Where did you get this? When was this taken?" Her hands were shaking as she reached for the tablet, desperate to touch the image to prove it was real. Dr. Cole pulled it back gently, his expression grave. "Claire, this is Evelyn Marsh. She died 2 years ago in Austin, Texas." The room seemed to tilt. Claire's vision blurred at the edges. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not possible. I'm here. I'm alive. But even as she said it, a terrible understanding began to creep through her mind like ice water through her veins. If Evelyn Marsh was dead, then whose memories was she carrying? And more horrifying still, if she remembered Evelyn's entire life with perfect clarity, but couldn't remember a single moment of Claire Ashford's existence, then which one of them was real? Which one of them had truly died? The nights were the worst. In the sterile darkness of the hospital room, with machines beeping their steady rhythms and the distant sound of nurses' footsteps in the corridor, Claire lay awake and felt her mind fracturing. She would close her eyes and try, desperately, painfully try to remember something, anything from Claire Ashford's life. A birthday, a friend's name, the taste of a favorite food. But there was nothing. Just an empty space where 34 years of life should have been, like a house stripped bare of all its furniture, all its photographs, all evidence that anyone had ever lived there at all. And into that terrible emptiness, Evelyn's memories poured like water into a sinking ship. She remembered things she had no right to remember. The exact sound of Richard's laugh, the way the porch swing at the ranch creaked on humid nights, the smell of her mother's perfume, Chanel No. 5, worn only on Sundays, the weight of Thomas in her arms when he was born, impossibly small and perfect, and hers. These weren't vague impressions or dreamlike fragments. They were solid, tangible, real, more real than the hospital bed beneath her, more real than Marcus's anguished face when he visited, more real than her own reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dr. Cole came every day, always with more questions, always writing in that damned notebook. He'd started researching Evelyn Marsh, and what he found disturbed him. She could see it in the way his professional mask slipped sometimes, in the way he'd pause mid-sentence and stare at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "I spoke with Evelyn's death certificate issuer," he told her on the 4th day. "She died of complications from a brain tumor, glioblastoma. She'd been sick for months. He hesitated. Claire, in the weeks before her death, Evelyn was participating in some kind of medical study. Her husband, Richard, signed off on it, but I can't find any record of what kind of study it was. The institution listed doesn't exist anymore. Something cold crawled down Claire's spine. A medical study. She searched Evelyn's memories, digging through them like someone searching through drawers in the dark, and found something. A sterile room, electrodes attached to her temples, a doctor's voice, calm and reassuring, telling her this was cutting edge, that her memories could be preserved, that she wouldn't truly be gone. And then Richard's hand in hers, squeezing tight, his voice breaking as he said, "I can't lose you, I can't." Claire's eyes snapped open. "They did something to her," she whispered. "Before she died, they did something to her brain." Dr. Cole leaned forward. "What do you remember?" She told him about the room, the electrodes, the doctor's promises. As she spoke, more details surfaced. Consent forms she'd signed, technical terms she hadn't understood, Richard's desperation overriding her doubts. And then, at the very end, a moment of clarity. Evelyn lying in that chair, knowing she was dying, thinking about her life, about all the memories she'd made, about Thomas and Richard and the ranch and everything she would lose, and making a choice. A terrible, selfish choice, to let those memories live on, even if it meant putting them in someone else. Claire finished, her voice hollow. She looked at Dr. Cole, and in his eyes she saw the same horrified understanding dawning. She knew, Evelyn knew, that for her memories to survive, someone else would have to lose theirs, and she did it anyway. The question that remained hanging in the air between them like a blade was simple and devastating. Who had done this to Claire? Who had stolen her life and filled her mind with a dead woman's past? And most terrifying of all, were they finished with her, or was this just the beginning? Dr. Cole made the call against protocol, against every rule in his medical handbook, but he made it anyway. Richard Marsh answered on the third ring, his voice wary and tired. "Who is this?" When Cole explained, carefully, clinically, that a patient in Portland was experiencing memories of his late wife, the line went silent for so long, Cole thought the connection had dropped. Then Richard spoke, and his voice was different, colder. "That's impossible. Evelyn is dead. Whoever this patient is, she's delusional or lying." But there was something in his tone, something that made Cole's instincts flare. "She knows things, Mr. Marsh, private things, details about your life together that weren't in any obituary or public record. She knows about Thomas." Another pause. When Richard spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Don't contact me again. And tell your patient to stop this. She's playing with things she doesn't understand." The line went dead. Claire watched Dr. Cole's face as he relayed the conversation. She saw the doubt there, the fear, the growing certainty that something deeply wrong was happening. "He's hiding something," she said. It wasn't a question. Cole nodded slowly. "I think it's time we find out what." That night, against hospital policy and Marcus's desperate protests, Claire left. Dr. Cole drove, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his professional detachment crumbling with every mile. They were heading to Austin, to Evelyn's old house, to the place where, buried in the backyard beneath an oak tree, Evelyn's memories insisted there was a metal box containing the truth. Claire stared out the window at the passing darkness and wondered if she was driving toward answers or toward her own complete destruction. Because deep in Evelyn's memories, there was one more fragment she hadn't told Dr. Cole. A memory of Evelyn's last conscious moment, lying in that medical chair, electrodes humming against her skull. And in that memory, Evelyn had looked at someone, not Richard, someone else, and whispered 5 words that now echoed in Claire's mind like a curse. "Make sure she never remembers." The house stood exactly as Evelyn's memories promised it would. A modest 2-story craftsman with peeling blue paint and a wraparound porch, nestled on 3 acres of overgrown land on the outskirts of Austin. Claire's hands trembled as she opened the car door. Every detail matched what was in her head. The cracked 4th step, the wind chime made of old spoons hanging by the door, the oak tree in the backyard, its branches spreading like arms, reaching for something they could never quite grasp. Dr. Cole followed her around the side of the house, flashlight in hand, neither of them speaking. The property had been abandoned since Evelyn's death, Richard apparently unable to bear returning to it. Tall grass whispered against their legs as they walked toward the oak tree. Claire stopped 3 feet from the trunk, closed her eyes, and let Evelyn's memory guide her. 5 steps north from the trunk, she murmured, 2 feet down. They dug with a folding shovel Cole had brought from his trunk, the blade biting into Texas clay. 15 minutes later, metal scraped against metal. The box was small, waterproof, sealed with a combination lock. Claire's fingers moved without conscious thought, spinning the dial. 3:14:27, Thomas's birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside were USB drives, medical documents, and a small digital voice recorder. Claire pressed play with shaking hands, and Evelyn's voice filled the night air. Weak, tired, but unmistakably hers. "My name is Evelyn Catherine Marsh. If you're listening to this, then it worked. Then I'm still alive in a way, or someone else is living with my memories, which amounts to the same thing." A pause, the sound of labored breathing. "I'm dying, glioblastoma, stage 4. I have maybe 6 weeks left, but Richard found something. A project, an experiment. Project Echo. They said they could preserve my consciousness, my memories, by transferring them into another person's neural pathways. A living person, someone healthy." Claire's stomach turned. "They told me the recipient would be a volunteer, someone willing to carry my memories after I was gone. They made it sound beautiful, noble, like I'd be giving someone the gift of a rich, full life they'd never had. But I'm not stupid. I started asking questions. Where do these volunteers come from? How do they consent? And Richard. God, Richard just kept saying it didn't matter, that all that mattered was that we'd still be together somehow." The recording crackled. "They're calling her a compatible candidate. Subject 7C. That's all the paperwork says. Not a name, not a person, just a designation. And I know in my bones, that she doesn't know what's about to happen to her. That when they put my memories in her head, everything she is will be erased." Evelyn's voice broke. "I should stop this. I should refuse. But I'm so scared of dying. I'm so scared of losing Thomas all over again, of forgetting what his laugh sounded like, of everything. I am just disappearing into nothing. So I'm making a choice, a terrible, unforgivable choice. I'm letting them do it. I'm letting them destroy someone else so I can live on." A long silence, then, "Whoever you are, whoever's listening to this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I chose myself over you, and I'd do it again." The recording ended. Claire stood in the darkness, the voice recorder heavy in her hand, and finally understood the full horror of what had been done to her. She wasn't just carrying Evelyn's memories, she was Evelyn's grave, a living tomb where a dead woman's consciousness had been buried, and Claire Ashford had been the sacrifice. Dr. Cole's face was pale in the flashlight beam. "Claire, we need to find out who ran this project. We need to—" He stopped. Headlights were coming up the driveway, a car door slammed, and Richard Marsh's voice cut through the night, tight with barely controlled fury. "Step away from that box, both of you, right now." Richard Marsh looked older than the man in Evelyn's memories, grayer, thinner, haunted, but his eyes held the same desperate intensity that had driven him to fund an illegal experiment, to sacrifice a stranger's life for the ghost of his wife. He wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their postures suggesting they were more than just lawyers. Claire stepped forward, and something flickered across Richard's face when he saw her. Recognition, longing, horror, all tangled together. "Evelyn," he breathed, and the name was a prayer and a curse. "No," Claire said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I'm not Evelyn. Evelyn is dead. You know she's dead because you watched them put her memories into my brain and destroy everything I was." Richard flinched. "You don't understand. She was dying. I couldn't just let her go. Everything she was, everything we'd built together, it would have all disappeared. This way she lives on. You live on, Evelyn." Dr. Cole stepped between them. "She's not Evelyn. Her name is Claire Ashford. She had a life, a husband, an identity. You took that from her." One of the suited men moved forward, hand reaching inside his jacket. Richard held up a hand, stopping him. "The project was designed to preserve consciousness, to beat death. We selected candidates carefully, people with minimal social connections, no children, reduced neurological activity that suggested they'd be compatible hosts. Claire Ashford was perfect. Clean medical history, living alone most of the time, minimal family contact. She wouldn't be missed as much." Claire's breath caught. "You've done this before. I wasn't the first." Richard's silence was answer enough. "How many?" Dr. Cole demanded. "How many people have you erased?" Richard's jaw tightened. 17 successful transfers. 17 people who were dying got to live on. Their memories, their experiences, their knowledge, all preserved. It's not murder, it's immortality. Claire felt Evelyn's memories swirling in her mind, felt the weight of a life she'd never lived pressing down on her consciousness. "Evelyn knew," she said quietly. "She knew I didn't consent. I heard her recording. She was sorry, but she let you do it anyway. For the first time, Richard's composure cracked. She was scared. She was dying, and she was scared, and I promised her I'd find a way. That's what you do when you love someone. You save them, no matter the cost. Not at the cost of someone else's life, Dr. Cole shot back. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. This ends now. The suited man's hand moved faster than Claire could track, and suddenly Dr. Cole was on his knees, phone skittering across the grass, the man's gun pressed to the back of his head. Claire's scream caught in her throat. I can't let you expose this, Richard said, and he sounded genuinely regretful. There are others. 17 people carrying the memories of loved ones who would have been lost forever. Families who got to keep pieces of the people they loved. You'd destroy all of that. You'd kill them all over again. Claire's mind raced. In Evelyn's memories, she found something. A fragment of a conversation. Technical details about the transfer process that Evelyn had overheard. The transfers weren't permanent. They could be reversed, but only within the first 6 months. After that, the neural pathways would be too integrated, the original consciousness too degraded to recover. How long has it been since my accident? Claire asked, her voice shaking. Richard's expression told her everything. 5 months and 3 weeks. 1 week. She had 1 week before Claire Ashford was lost forever, before Evelyn's memories became permanent, before she stopped being a victim and became a walking grave. There's a facility, Richard continued, his voice taking on a pleading quality. We can help you. We can make the integration easier, help you accept Evelyn's memories as your own. You don't have to fight this anymore. You can let Claire go and just be Evelyn. I know you feel her in there. I can see her in your eyes. Come back to me, Evelyn, please. And for one terrible, tempting moment, Claire considered it. Because living as Evelyn, with a complete set of memories and a man who loved her desperately, was easier than being no one at all. But then she thought about the real Claire Ashford, the woman whose life had been stolen, whose memories had been erased, who'd never gotten a choice. And she thought about the 16 other people walking around with dead people's memories, never knowing they'd been murdered in all but name. No, Claire said. She looked at Richard, at this man who'd loved Evelyn so much he'd destroyed 17 lives to keep her alive. Evelyn made her choice, now I'm making mine. She lunged for the box of evidence, grabbing USB drives and shoving them into her jacket. The suited man turned, gun swinging toward her, and Dr. Cole threw himself sideways, knocking the weapon aside. The gun went off, the sound explosive in the quiet night. Claire ran. Behind her, shouts erupted, footsteps pounded. But she had Evelyn's memories of this property, knew every path, every hiding spot. She crashed through the overgrown garden, the USB drives pressed against her chest like a lifeline, and somewhere in the chaos, she heard Dr. Cole yelling for her to keep going. Project Echo had stolen her life, but she still had 1 week to take it back, 1 week to expose the truth, 1 week to decide who she wanted to be, if she could be anyone at all.